The season finale of The Acolyte just dropped. Let's talk about what happened. Right, Sons, everybody, Batuuboii here, and welcome to another review video for The Acolyte. We're finally here. It is the season finale. This is episode 8, entitled The Acolyte. For just a little bit when it came out, it didn't have a title up until literally when I just checked it now, but it is entitled The Acolyte. This is going to be very heavy. A lot happened in this episode. A lot was revealed. There were answers to a lot of questions, but then more questions are brought up. So as always, I won't go further into it, spoiler free. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch it like right now before you watch this video. So obviously last episode was a flashback from the Jedi's perspective of what happened on Brendok. And now with this being the season finale, we jump back to the present time where we find Osha, who had put on Kamir's sensory deprivation helmet on, and we hear her breathing coming into the episode, and all of a sudden we kind of see her like spasm and like lock in place. Kamir's right there and he goes to reach for the helmet, and we see him go into the same state that Master Torben went into when on Brendok. So I'm guessing a little bit of that witch magic is coming out of Osha and taking over Kamir. As we see his eyes turn black, he enters that like dark state. Entire room kind of goes like to a darkish blue, and he's having a hard time trying to reach out to get this helmet off, but he's able to eventually get the helmet off of Osha. Osha reveals that she had a vision while in the helmet where she saw May reaching her hand out and killing Sol, but she also has Sol's lightsaber in her hand. They agree to get on a ship, and whoever gets to her first, they'll see what happens. And this is where Kamir also seems to confirm that she can kill with no weapon, which I'm assuming meant that she kills using the Force. We'll see where that goes from there. We jump back to the Jedi ship. Sol is sitting there and May is still restrained. We see her fiddling with the restraints. She kind of reaches out for Pip to use his lockpick to start messing around with the handcuffs. And Sol explains to May about the Vergence on Brendok, and that with having the twins both there, this is the key to proving that is there. And they begin to argue about who really was responsible for Mother Anastaea's death. Sol never really confirms it, saying that he knew what he was doing was right and it was the best thing for the safety of the girls. And before he goes into further explaining what the girls really are, May is able to get out of her restraints and stun Sol with Pip. He's able to get out and get onto an escape pod and get out of the Jedi transport ship. Sol gets to the cockpit and is able to release kind of like how the Millennium Falcon had it in Solo, where there's pretty much a secondary ship in front of the ship. He's able to get out, and it starts this super cool chase scene that we saw little bits of in the trailer for The Acolyte. They're going through the rings of the moon atop of Brendok, and it's they're in between two asteroid fields, and there's still rocks in between them. As we're going through the chase, we're starting to see Sol bring up his targeting computer. He's trying to line it up with May's ship. As Sol is trying to match up May's ship, Basil knows what's going on. They're thinking, oh, he's gonna try and kill May, and so he starts ripping apart the cables in some panel, and this in part just starts taking down the ship. It takes down his targeting computer, and then Sol's ship just starts kind of floating away. But May loses control of her escape pod, and it starts spiraling out of control as it enters the atmosphere of Brendok and eventually just crash lands on the planet. We jump back to Coruscant, where Mog enters, saying that Senator Ravencourt, one of the members of the Imperial Senate, has arrived on the Jedi Temple to speak with Vernestra about these rumors of a murder investigation going on. Obviously, Vernestra is kind of upset that Mog let him into the Jedi Temple in the first place, but she puts on a face, is pretending that she's happy to see Senator Ravencourt, who obviously has sorts, not a vendetta against the Jedi as he mentions, but he doesn't really like them. He thinks that they have too much power, that they have too much control control over the uncontrollable, which Vernestra assumes is the Force, but he says no, it's your emotions that you play off, that you have control over your own emotions, you're peaceful, but is only a matter of time before somebody snaps and ensues what is currently happening. Vernestra asks if he has anything else to say and kind of just Force opens a door and asks him to leave, and he says that he is going to push for a full investigation of the Jedi through the Senate and walks out. Before he leaves, he gives us what I think is a crazy line. I really liked it. Was when you look up to heroes, you don't have to face what's right in front of you. Talking about how a lot of the Senate can't really see their lives without the Jedi. They're looking up to the Jedi as these heroes of the Republic, these heroes of the galaxy, but they don't see what's going on like in their neighborhood or going on right in front of them, as they think the Jedi are going to be the ones to take care of all of that instead of having them face it themselves. It's a bar. Another bar that we heard earlier before May gets onto the ship was "See you in hell, Jedi," which I had to think about it because I was like, did we ever hear the word hell in Star Wars? And we did. It's in A New Hope. Literally the very first piece of Star Wars media, we hear the word hell. It's spoken by Uncle Owen, and I'll post the clip right here.
Well, you better have those units in the South Range repaired by midday or there'll be hell to pay.
We're back on the unknown planet where Osha and Kamir are preparing to get onto their ship. It's here that Kamir tries to convince Osha one last time to let him train her, to show her how to use your emotions to further connect yourself back to the Force. She denies twice and she says, "I'm not my sister." Kamir says, "I know." May didn't hesitate or even think about it when she told me yes to training her. So they get onto the ship and we kind of are just left watching the ship take off at this point. And we're kind of having the camera back into this little cave where we then see some fingers linger on to the cave, and it is revealed after another shot turns around and we get none other than Darth Plagueis. I screamed, I shouted. It's the first time we have ever seen Darth Plagueis in a live action Star Wars. A lot of people are either super excited like I am or are upset with how Plagueis was revealed in this show, but again, it's going to be such a great opportunity. We have heard so much about Darth Plagueis over almost 19 years when he was first talked about in Revenge of the Sith as being the master to Chancellor Palpatine. It's going to be a very interesting connection because his obsession throughout his entire life was trying to create life through the Force, was trying to find the key to immortality. Because up until when we hear the tragedy, it is he can bring the dead back to life or prevent death, but he has this obsession of wanting to create new life and have this power to be able to control it to his will, and it opens up a lot of things for a season 2, which I definitely hope we get now that Plagueis has finally arrived, and I'm so excited for it. And right when we get that bombshell, we jump right back to Brendok where Sol lands his ship. He turns on his tracking beacon so the Jedi can come and find him, and he begins his search for May. After that, we jump right back to Coruscant with another shot where Mog tells Vernestra that they have located Sol on Brendok. Vernestra obviously is a little upset about this, seeing as he's kind of going back to the scene of the crime, but she tells Mog to prepare the ship and gather as many Jedi Knights as you can without raising alarm. So Vernestra's just trying to keep it on the DL and just get some business moving. We jump back to Brendok where Kamir and Osha have landed. Sol kind of sees the ship as it lands, but he is able to make his way into the abandoned mines where the Coven used to live, and this is the first time we have seen it outside of the flashbacks, and it is run down. It is almost completely destroyed. There is seemingly no signs of life in this Coven anymore, and I'm thinking, like, are we gonna see Mother Quarrel? Are we finally gonna see what happened to her? And we do not. We don't see any of the witches on Brendok. We start to hear flashbacks as Sol begins to remember the events of what happened in episode 7, but it's all through audio, so just like I guess kind of his connection through the Force is making him relive this trauma. He begins to try and find where May is, even returning to the Coven's lair, where we see the two parts of the bridges that collapsed when the twins were on there. And we then cut back to Camille and Osha, who end up at the entrance of the abandoned mine as they try to find their way in there. Obviously, the controls are still broken from when May broke them 16 years ago, so they have to try and find a way in, or they're gonna have to climb. But at this point, it's now a free-for-all as Camille seemingly disappears and leaves Osha alone to try and figure out how she's gonna fix the elevator controls. But we cut back to Sol looking around, yelling May's name. He's in this little hallway as he screams for May again, and Camille is back with the helmet on, and he ignites his lightsaber, and these two go all out on this lightsaber duel. And again, the choreography is incredible. It's the best part of the show. They take the fight outside. They're kind of going through this little hallway while still fighting, kind of reminiscent of Anakin and Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith. It's really nice. It feels claustrophobic. It's tight. There's a lot of slow motion shots of them kind of floating using the Force that look really cool. We see Camille again start taking out his lightsaber, and we see it now. It's a full lightsaber and then a kind of dagger type saber that he uses to kind of dual wield against Sol. There's one move that I thought was one of the top just lightsaber fight moments I have seen in a while, where Camille tosses his lightsaber and the dagger to kind of spin around and have it come back to hit Sol. Sol de-ignites his lightsaber and kind of just puts his hand out as Camille comes up to kind of just super punch Sol. And Sol uses the Force to create this force field to push everything back around him. The two lightsabers coming from behind and Camille coming up in front, and he just kind of boom, pushes everybody back, and it was incredible. We see a lot of these moments during the fight where Sol, after doing something like that, will slowly pick up his lightsaber and then ignite it very slowly. Kind of like a samurai, just he's very attributed in his ways. He takes his time, he's calm, he is confident in his abilities, but it's not overconfident. Whereas you see Camille, and he quickly ignites his lightsabers. He wants to get just right back into the fight. He puts them back together and just starts running towards Sol to continue the fight. We then cut to May walking into what was their old bedroom and the location where the fire started. Osha finds her, and they begin this dialogue about, this is all your fault. The reason why I couldn't become a Jedi is because I couldn't let go of these negative feelings that I had, this hatred for you basically destroying our family, which, true, yes, May brings up the argument that it was the Jedi's fault and that Sol killing their mother was the thing that created her negative feelings. Yes, the Jedi coming in and intervening was neither right nor wrong, but who started the fire? It was May. Who took out the controls to lock everybody in? It was May. So, in my opinion, May is completely wrong. May was the one that started the fire, and the Jedi intervention, while it may have distracted the witches from other things to put out the fire, this is May's fault. There's nothing May could say for me to be oh, well, maybe that's true. She started the fire. But it's also here that May drops the bombshell on Osha that Sol killed their mother. Osha does not believe that at all. They begin a hand-to-hand combat sequence that kind of almost really just confirms that they are one in the same. They are literally two parts of the same being, where a lot of the hand-to-hand combat is almost mirrored, and it's also reflected in the way that they're dressed. In the first episode, we see May in all black with the face mask on, and we see Osha with the white or gray garments for her mechanic days. And now we finally get to episode 8, and they have both switched. So May has Osha's clothing, and Osha has this black, kind of darkish gray garment. It's kind of this yin and yang, that they are kind of balanced with each other and almost switched roles. It just looks really nice because they know each other's moves and they know how to either attack or defend each other. Soul and Kamir fight continues, and it ends with Soul cutting Kamir's lightsaber down to the kyber crystal, which I was kind of thinking, like, would that disable the lightsaber? Because if he's able to have two, would there be two kyber crystals? It didn't look like the kyber crystal was cut, so I'm not sure, but the fight ends. Soul points his lightsaber at Kamir, but doesn't strike him down because he's an unarmed combatant, and you know what's happened with Soul in the past of striking people like that down. But before he can even think about doing anything else, May shows up and starts fighting Soul just for a little bit until she steals his lightsaber, and it is here where we're thinking, here's what's gonna happen. This is the vision that we saw in the beginning of the episode coming to fruition, and even Kamir is kind of egging her on, saying, feel your anger, strike him down, and she refuses. She throws Soul's lightsaber away and says, no, I don't want him to die. I want him to face the council and pay for his crimes. And it's here that Soul again just keeps preaching that he thought what they did was right. They needed to intervene for the safety of the children. It's also here that he reveals to May they are not twins. They're not even sisters. They are two copies of the same being. They are literally the same person. They were created by Mother Anastasia through the Force. They were created with the help of the Virgins, and in order to prove that there was a Virgins on Brendok, he needed both twins there because he couldn't prove it with one if he didn't have the other. And that is why having the both of them and saving the both of them was so important to Soul to prove that there was a Virgins on Brendok. It's here that we also see Osha come up. She kind of picks up Soul's lightsaber off the ground and asks if it's true, because it's also here that he, for the first time, confesses that yes, he killed Mother Anastasia, as we all saw in episode 7. But this is his first time, like, just coming to terms with the fact that while he may have thought this was right, while other people thought it was wrong, he is admitting to his crime of killing an unarmed combatant. And obviously Osha asks if this is true. He says he thought that this was the right thing to do. She asks why he didn't tell her all this time, and he says that they would have taken you away from me. You wouldn't have been able to become a Jedi because you were too old to start the training, and you would have never lived out your dreams of becoming a Jedi. Which, yes and no. Like, I know Osha had her reserves about wanting to go through with the Ascension, but I don't really think she wanted to become a Jedi until the Jedi actually showed up. So with their intervention, like, what would have happened with Osha? Like, she probably would have just become part of the Witch Coven and she would have just been fine. So, like, whose dream was it? Was it really Osha's dream before the Jedi showed up? Or was this all Soul wanting a Padawan, Soul wanting to bring these girls in to prove that there was a Virgins on Brendok and helping out his own Jedi career? It's also here, while Soul continues to try and speak with Osha, he gets cut off and he begins to start choking, and we see that Osha raises her hand and is force choking Soul, asking him to stop talking. She just continues to just squeeze the life out of Soul. And it's here we also cut, because she still has Soul lightsaber in her hand, and it's here that, like, we also see the crystal from the inside as she begins to bleed the crystal in Soul's lightsaber, turning it from blue to red. And from my understanding, this is the first time that we've seen it in a live action Star Wars, and I actually had a quote pulled up that kind of goes further into this, like, you know, being that she is turning into a Sith, and it's actually from Darth Sidious, saying that first they must seize a pure crystal from the lightsaber of a Jedi they have vanquished in combat. For the saber of a Sith is not given, it is taken. So she has taken Soul's lightsaber and has literally vanquishing her foe in combat, as Soul's last words are, it's okay to end me for what I've done. And she squeezes her fist, closing his throat and killing Soul. I was a little upset about, like, yes, I know, like, throughout these review videos I have shown my appreciation and love for Soul, and I still do, even after everything that's happened, after all the shady stuff that he has been doing, and after everything that he did in episode 7, but I mean, Soul's reasonings for what happened, while questionable, still came from a place of compassion. Like, after he had taken on Osha as a Padawan. I mean, he truly cared for these girls. Like, even while they were talking, like, my biggest regret was not being able to save the both of you. He wanted to save these children, like, whether the intentions were for his own benefit, like, it comes off as compassionate. And I mean, Lee Jung-jae played this character so well, especially with this not even being his first language. Like, he still does all of his interviews with a Korean translator. So, I mean, this was tough for him. He pulled it off very well. Sol has quickly become one of my favorite Star Wars characters in a while, and it sucks to see him die like this, like not in combat, not of old age. Like, he gets force choked by his former Padawan, and it's really sad. We see him, his body falls to the ground. Osha is incredibly upset because she has conflicting feelings of like what's happening, and as Camille tries to like reach for her, Osha ignites Sol's lightsaber, and we see it transition from blue turning all the way to red, and it was one of the coolest Star Wars shots I have ever seen in my life. Watching a lightsaber literally bleed on screen was some of the coolest things I've ever seen. It's even funnier that even while getting notes for this episode, like on Wikipedia, when you type in bleeding, like the process of bleeding a crystal, the new picture is literally Osha with the lightsaber turning from blue to red. It's crazy. We also see the Jedi Knights land on Brendok, and we see Vernestra come out, and she kind of starts using the Force to kind of scan her surroundings, and she's able to pinpoint Camille, and she says, you're alive. But we cut right back to Camille, who senses this, and he puts his deprivation helmet back on, seemingly to cut off that link between Vernestra and Camille, and they continue on their way. It's here that we also get that Camille has left. He is trying to escape being from Mother Vernestra, either through just like fear of getting like caught by the Jedi Knights, or just fear for Vernestra herself. Like, she is a pretty intimidating character, and who knows what the history behind those two is. But May insists that Osha follows her as she knows a way out. This way out is how she was able to survive that fall 16 years ago, as they go through the same kind of chasm that she fell into, and we see this ventilation shaft on the side that sucked May in through her fall and broke her fall, and that's how she was able to survive that incident 16 years ago. The Jedi Knights show up in the Coven, and they see Sol's dead body. Vernestra begins to use those Force echoes, kind of like Cal Kestis, where she can hear the events of what happened in episode 7 around her. She then tells the Jedi Knights to split up and set up a perimeter while she goes and takes a look at Sol's dead body. We kind of see her lean forward and whisper something, but we don't really hear anything, as we are now in the perspective of Camille, who is on a ledge above looking down at Vernestra. Vernestra looks back up, and he's gone. We then cut to the twins finding themselves at the Bunta tree, which is that big yellow tree that we see a lot of. It's also where May secured the poison for Master Torben. This is also where May says that she waited at this tree for a long time, waiting for Osha to come back. This is really the first time that we see Osha break down and console her sister and apologize just for everything that happened, as she believes that May was right. Like, she was right in all of her actions, which are questionable. I don't really agree with that. But they begin to, talk about everything that's happened. Camille is able to find them, and he says, if I can find you, so can the Jedi. So we need to start getting a move on. It's here because we cut back to the Jedi Knights continuing to find them. They have a lead on the location of the twins, and they start running towards it. It's here that Osha tells Camille that she will take on his training and to leave May alone. That she will go on and she will be Camille's acolyte. Camille brings up the fact that the Jedi are going to use May to try and find the two of them, but he brings up something that really I haven't heard in Star Wars before, and says that he can wipe May's memory so that the Jedi can't use them to try and find them. And he can do this, but it's permanent. She will forget literally everything about her sister, about just their relationship, just everything. Osha is upset about this, but May agrees that this is the best thing for everybody. The both of them embrace. They begin to, talk about, like, they do their little poem thing, but besides that, like, this scene is very emotional. These two sisters, like, whether you want to call them sisters or not, they have that relationship, obviously. So they're so upset with each other, and they're just, tears are streaming. As they begin to say their poem, Camille begins to start erasing May's memory. And as they recite it, May forgets more and more of the poem, and you can see it in her face, coming from like sadness to just pure confusion as she forgets who the person in front of her is and just begins to lose all of her memory. And it is really just like, it's upsetting. This relationship is what has fueled everything. Finding Osha was May's main motivation for literally everything, and now she has forgotten all of that. And it's such a touching moment between the two of them. Camille and Osha run away. The Jedi Knights are now at the Bunta tree where they find May, and they say that she's under arrest. May obviously has had her memory wiped, so she has no idea what's going on. She doesn't know why she's being arrested, but we cut back to Coruscant anyway, where the Jedi Knights bring in a now handcuffed May to come and speak with Vernestra. They sit her down, all the Jedi Knights leave, so now it is just Vernestra and May. And she begins to ask her what she remembers, because obviously May doesn't remember anything. From what we see, May is only able to remember what happened to her at 8 years old. She recounts the events of episode 7 and 3, but is not able to pinpoint who did it and who this person that she needs to talk to them about is. She has no recollection of her sister. It's also here that Vernestra begins to kind of give a recap of what happened to May. There are some details kind of left out as she's also speaking to the Senate about the events and about these murder investigations. Obviously going into that the 4 Jedi were stationed on Brendok, they were investigating something, but that there was a rogue Jedi, a sole rogue Jedi named Master Soul, who went out and started killing the other 3 Jedi for his own personal vendetta. And it's heartbreaking. It makes me just hate Vernestra even more, seeing as though like she just twists the narrative around for her own personal gain, and she might think that it's for the personal best of the Jedi. As in the Senate meeting, Senator Ravencourt calls for an immediate investigation of the Jedi. She says these were actions performed by one Jedi, one rogue Jedi, and it's been taken care of. The head of the Senate asks where Master Soul is now. She said that while on Brendok, they observed his dead body. They assumed that he must have taken his own life. We also see here that she did give Soul a proper Jedi burial as a cremation. They put him out on a little boat, but yes, it's traditional, but it's also a good way to hide a body, to see that like maybe he got force choked. They don't know who force choked him, but there's no way to not prove that he took his own life. And it's here that the Senate say that they don't need to do an investigation anymore because the case has been closed, because it was this one rogue Jedi that just killed everybody, but he's dead now, so the problem is taken care of. Thanks, Vernestra. It's also here that we cut back to Vernestra on Brendok leaning down to Soul as she says, "I'm sorry, my friend." Was he really your friend though, if this is what you're gonna continue his legacy with after everything he's done with Osha? Please. He reveals to May that she has a sister and asks if the name Osha means anything to her. We can assume that this is what's going to be the next mission in season 2, because Vernestra does ask May that she needs her assistance in finding someone. She needs to find a pupil of mine before he turned to evil. This being Camille. We then cut back to the unknown planet as Camille and Osha look out into the ocean. They kind of just hold hands, but this is the beginning. This is who the new Acolyte is. This is Camille's new kind of trainee. It's all coming together now. It's a beautiful shot of them just like on the rocks with the ship, with the waves crashing onto the rocks, and we cut to black. But then we cut right back to Coruscant as Mother Vernestra enters a room and she says, "I need to speak with you, Master." And we're thinking, who is this Master? As the camera pans down just low enough to see Master Yoda from behind with his ears, his hair, his garments. Like this is Master Yoda. And it's also confirmed like on Wikipedia. He also has really big parts in the High Republic novels as well. So this is Master Yoda, and we're going to hopefully see those connections and see a little bit more of him if we get a season 2 of The Acolyte, which again, I'm hoping we do. there has not been a more polarizing piece of Star Wars media like since The Last Jedi, where a lot of people either really loved it or really hated it. But I mean, overall, I can say now that the show is finally finished, like, it has enough of an audience and enough traction and enough just like viewership that it warrants a season 2. Like, we have so many unanswered questions that are brought up that can lead into a season 2 easily. And I hope that, they give Leslie Headland that chance to continue to develop that world and develop the High Republic and develop these stories that we're getting. Like, what's going to happen with Darth Plagueis? How is he going to get involved? Just seeing Osha and seeing that proof of creating life, like, further his exploits further down the line. Like, what is going to happen? And I'm so excited. I really hope that, at Celebration, that we get a little something. Like, I'm sure we'll get a recap panel of everything from the Acolyte, and I'm hoping it's here that we get a season 2 reveal. But while I didn't love it, like shows like Andor or like The Mandalorian, I really enjoyed it. There were some things that, could have been done better. But, I mean, the lightsaber choreography is amazing. Like, the Sith parts are the best parts of the show, and just everything, like, just the rest of it overall, like, the story is something new. It's something original of Star Wars that we haven't gotten in a while. Like, besides episode 8 of the Acolyte, like, connecting Plagueis and Yoda, like, all of this stuff, like, was just stuff from Legends and stuff from the High Republic that are being brought into the forefront in live action and being placed, like, in official canon. And it's just such a beautiful thing. So I really hope that we do get a season 2 of the Acolyte. But tell me what you think. Leave a comment down below of what you thought of the season finale. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Make sure to like and subscribe for more Star Wars content. But until the next Star Wars show, and until, just the next piece of Star Wars media in general, till the spire, my friends.